Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast, the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions, the worlds of TV, film, sports, news, music, everything really depending on the guest. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest made headlines when he came in as the emergency backup goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes. We are speaking to Dave Ayres. Dave, welcome to Popternative, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to do this. I mean, here's the thing, that whole story of you kind of coming in and for the Carolina Hurricanes in Toronto would just like, it wouldn't leave. It was everywhere all the time. But what I found very interesting is people were saying, oh, you know, Zamboni driver because you were an operator, but there's a lot more to the story and you have an amazing story. So what do you kind of think about the fact that, yeah, people are saying you're a Zamboni driver because you did once operate Zambonis, but there's way more to that, right, Dave? There's way more to the story.
Oh, yeah. I think, being an operations manager and driving a Zamboni for years, I drove 2 years full time for the Marlies when I first started in Toronto. And I think that's where it came from. I backed up Bernier once, and I was actually driving a Zamboni for the Marlies at that point in time. But then I had quit and I went on to a different area. So Zamboni driving wasn't my full-time gig, but I was in the arena. So every time I got a chance to jump on the Zamboni, of course, it's fun to drive. So why wouldn't you, right? But that's where it all came from.
So did you and Sarah, were you guys ever talking man, they're really using this Zamboni driver thing? Did that ever come up during that time too? When you guys were talking?
Yeah. What's funny? The guy who wrote an article about me years and years ago saying I was a Zamboni driver, he even said to me, he's like, I'm going to put that you're a Zamboni driver because everybody's going to read it. And it's fair, right? it's fair. So I get it, that's the way that they got people to read it, and I'm fine with it.
You really can't write things like this. How it kind of came to be and everything, and the reception. You just can't at the end of the game, and then you guys won. You can't write things like that, Dave. But my question is, stuff happens. Hockey's a physical sport, right? Did it sometimes slip your mind that something could have happened, maybe at the AHL level, that you have to kind of sweep it, or did this completely blindside you?
You know what? Obviously, having my kidney transplant a long time ago, I just wanted to play hockey again.
Yeah.
And then, having the chance to even practice with the Marlies because I was working at the facility, and that's how I got into the whole thing. I brought my gear to the rink, and they had a couple injured players, and I skated with them, and they kept asking me to come out, and 8 years later, I was still doing the same thing. And, when the NHL came out with that emergency goalie rule, and they asked me to be an emergency goalie, obviously it's not something I ever thought about, but I said yes right away. Obviously, anybody who has a chance to be an emergency goalie in the NHL is probably going to take it. But yeah, I never thought I was going to play an NHL game. I thought my thing was I'm skating with the AHL guys and Marlies. They're great hockey players.
Yeah.
And I'm taking good shots. And it's easier than paying $600 to play in a beer league with guys that can't shoot, right? So,
Oh yeah, I ran a beer league in Ottawa for years, and so I know all about that dynamic.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get better and face as good a shots as I could for as long as I could, and obviously stumbled into the emergency goalie thing and played the game.
So here's the thing, this happens. It becomes an amazing story. Everyone's like, oh my God, the emergency goaltender comes in. It's fantastic. Then Sportsnet, I believe, runs a piece kind of diving in more about your story, about the kidney transplant and everything. And a lot of people did not know about that. So
Right.
that it kind of went from being a special story to being a special story, right? What was that all like for you when people kind of found out about the kidney transplant? Because a lot of people did not know about that, Dave.
Yeah, not too many people knew at all.
Yeah.
I think it kind of shocked a bunch of people. You know what? Even the guys that I skated with, a lot of the Leafs players, a lot of the Marlies players, had no idea that I ever had a kidney transplant. They just thought, who's this old guy out on the ice skating with us every day, practicing, sort of thing. And they had no idea about my medical history. when it came to the transplant. But obviously, it goes to show that people have some underlying things that nobody else knows about, and there's obviously a story beyond a story. So it was kind of cool just to be able to get people in the loop about the kidney disease and the fact that I had a transplant and all that great stuff that I've been doing with the Kidney Foundation.
Absolutely. Kind of, well, it tied everything together a little bit.
Right. Yeah,
which
I
is
think.
important.
Yeah, if I didn't have my transplant, I never would have been able to play that game. So I'm lucky that way.
I got chills talking about this, man. Because I remember watching that video about like the kidney transplant. I had no idea. So I remember like me and my parents like watching that. We kind of knew your story a little bit, and it's just an amazing story, man. Seriously. Headlines were made recently. We don't know much about it, but we know that it is happening. I mean, this is something that your story, like everyone joked around and said, you can make a movie about that. And there is going to be a movie. Disney is going to be making the Dave Ayres movie, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's funny. It all came about because Sarah and I, we were in Carolina when we went down there, and I got a phone call from James Corden, and he just called to congratulate me, and he said the story was great, and he kind of mentioned that he has a production company, and we just talked, and then we went through the whole process of, I think, listening to 24 different pitches of different production companies, and in the end, we chose James, and then I think his neighbor was like a guy that worked for Disney, and they kind of had a chat about it, and then it went from there, and everything's kind of just slowly getting rolling, obviously with COVID slowing it down, but yeah, something's going to happen and we're going to have fun with it.
It's because we see like you always see like rumblings online, and I remember like when John Scott was an all-star, that was a big story, and people were saying like, oh, maybe that could have been made into a movie, and then we see kind of things online, and that's why I asked you. I'm like, sometimes you don't know if things are legit or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff online that I've seen even about myself that aren't true, but that's one of them that's going to happen. Hopefully, anyways, we'll see how
crazy.
it goes.
What was that? So the James Corden calls you, and again, I think what we talked about the kidney transplant, that kind of just adds and ties everything together, just makes an amazing story. Do you think that was also just kind of all the layers of your story of the situation? Do you think why Disney was interested in it, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. I think, obviously having a couple conversations with James before he even went to the Disney part of it, him and I just spoke a few times and talked about just life in general. And, he thought it was a great story. And he's like, we have to make this into a movie. People are going to love it. And it's so inspirational. And it could help people out and get some more notice on organ donation and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So he was all for it, and we're right with him.
So it's interesting because you've been around hockey for most of your life, working operations manager. You started Zamboni, so you know about this. I know about the life because I worked in it as well. I work at a hockey rink. What can you tell people about the grind in terms of? I'm not talking about like getting on the ice and everything. I'm talking about the maintenance and like operations of a hockey rink, Dave, because I feel like people don't realize like how much work. And this is shout out to all my colleagues I work with that are supervisors and ops and everything. It's unsung heroes is an understatement. I just want to say that.
100%. I fully agree. Some people have no idea the work that the guys put in. These guys, they call them Zamboni drivers, but they don't just go sit on the Zamboni and drive around. They're edging the ice, they're maintaining the ice, they're keeping it at a certain level, they're doing the refrigeration, they're keeping the building clean. Everyone comes in and my biggest pet peeve is people throwing popcorn all over the floor. And next thing you know, guys are sweeping it all up, and it was the biggest pain in the butt. But guys put a ton of work in. You could be walking all day long, in your operations, in your job, and by the end of the day, you're tired and you're sore and you just want to go home. But the building looks great, the ice looks great, and people are having fun, but they have no idea what you just did.
It's insane. And operations manager, people could be like, what's an operations manager? I mean, it literally is what it is. Like, you are operating the rink. Like, there's not much more to say about that.
Yeah, operations manager encompasses everything. You're just you're doing payroll or budgeting, and you're doing all the staffing, and you're training, and you're working all day long, right? Mm-hmm. It's the computer side of things and the hands-on side of things as well. So, for me at Mattamy Athletic Center, when I was there, we had events come in, you're changing over to basketball events or any kind of big events that you have. So you're working day shift, afternoons, overnight, weekends. Like it's not a Monday to Friday job. It's hours all over the place.
Oh no. And you know what? I don't know how like we're like COVID hockey is also just next level. You talk about the popcorn on the floor and everything. And like
Yeah.
what's going through my mind is like, yeah, there was a lot of, pet peeves and a lot of complicated things about running a rink before COVID.
Yeah.
Just kind of hold my
Yeah.
over here, right?
Yeah. I got out of the arena business right after the game and stuff. So I haven't really had to deal with the COVID protocols that everyone has to go through now. But
you can only imagine, right?
I coach hockey, and we go at Whitby and we see what the arena guys have to do. Everything's all taped off, and chairs sitting out, and they're fogging the place to disinfect. So it's not easy.
Oh, absolutely. So we talked about the Disney movie in the works and everything. You said like you're like working at a rink and everything, not as much right now. What are you up to now? Like, what is kind of the Dave Ayres story now? Like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so I switched jobs I work for Simcoe Refrigeration, so I'm still in the arenas. If people don't know Simcoe Refrigeration, we do the maintenance and the sales and stuff of all the ice plant, like the refrigeration to keep the ice cold and frozen.
Oh yeah.
And we're in most of the places in North America, most of the arenas, and so I'm account manager for Toronto. So I'm actually account manager for the rink that I used to work at. So my boss calls me and he knows I know his system very well. So, that's more of a stay at home kind of job now. Like I can work remotely, I go in the odd time here and there. And then I'm just doing a lot of media stuff and all that. So this is great. Like being able to do remote work and still keep up with the everyday media kind of thing is awesome.
Oh, absolutely. If there was one thing that you hope people get out of the Dave Ayres story for a wrap up about, everything that happened, what are you hoping that they get out of it the most about your story? Because there's, the typical, following your dreams, kind of facing the adversity, going through things so doors can be open so you can actually follow your dreams. What are you hoping to get out of it the most?
I think that if someone comes to me and says, hey, I admire your determination. I admire the fact that when you got kicked down with your transplant, you decided to get yourself right back up and not let that beat you. I have a competitive spirit where, I always want to conquer things that I set for myself. And that was one of the things, after the transplant, I just wanted to play hockey. I wanted to be able to work out and, just in life in general, be positive, be a good person, and have the determination to get where you are. And in my case, I got a little bit beyond of where I ever thought I was going to be. So if people can look at that and take anything from it, that'd be great.
Amazing. Dave, thank you so much for coming on Popternative, man. I really appreciate chatting with you.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. So, you're still kind of active on social media. Where can people follow you on Instagram, Twitter? Like, where can they kind of keep up to date with everything?
Yeah, I don't have Twitter. I've kind of stayed away from that. Sarah uses her Twitter. I have Instagram.
Yeah, Sarah. I was about to say Sarah's pretty active on Twitter.
Yeah. If you ever want to have a good laugh or a fun person to follow, she's probably the one. She would tell you I'm terrible at social media. So but
that whole thing. I mean, you did all those like shows and the press and everything. I mean, that must have been so much all at once too, right?
Yeah, it was busy. We have a calendar that we had to fill out, and every day, I think for the last couple of weeks, we've had something going on. And even throughout the whole past year, I would say almost every day for the year, someone's requested something, whether it be an interview or sign this or sign jerseys or cards or something like that. We've always had a request for a full year. So that's been pretty busy. But like I said, I don't have Twitter. I have Instagram. David Ayres is my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I never had that before the game. So the agency said, you need to get this because people are going to make fake profiles about you all over the place. And so they just got me verified, and they told me to try and run with it, which if you look at my Instagram, I'm not very good. So any pointers would be fantastic.
Yeah,
what I should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, seriously, thank you so much for coming on Popternative and giving us some time. I really appreciate it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so fun. Thanks for having me here.
Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative. For previous episodes, till next time, this is Dave Ayres and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.